The autumn wind whistled through the golden aspen trees, carrying with it the promise of a bitter Wyoming winter as Rose Alderson struggled beneath the weight of firewood in her slender arms. Having arrived in Sweetwater Springs only 3 weeks prior, she was still adjusting to the harsh realities of frontier life in 1875, a far cry from the comforts of her Boston upbringing. Rose paused to readjust her burden, logs tumbling from her grasp as she fought to maintain her balance on the uneven path leading to her modest cabin. Her aunt's passing had left her this property, but the inheritance came with challenges she'd never imagined. The weight of her solitude pressed down on her just as heavily as the wood in her arms. "That's quite a load for someone your size," a deep voice called from behind her. Rose whirled around, nearly dropping the entire armful. A tall man sat atop a chestnut stallion, his face partially obscured by the brim of a worn leather hat. His shoulders were broad beneath a faded blue shirt, and the leather vest he wore had seen better days. "I manage just fine, thank you," she replied, lifting her chin despite the strain in her arms. The stranger dismounted in one fluid motion. "The name's Rhett Taylor," he said, removing his hat to reveal eyes the color of summer skies and hair the shade of sun-bleached wheat. "And you're going to hurt yourself carrying all that?" "Rose Alderson," she replied stiffly, "and I've been caring for myself since arriving. I don't need assistance." Rhett stepped closer, his expression softening as he noticed the redness of her hands, already raw from days of work they weren't accustomed to. "Your hands were made for mine, not for this burden," he said gently, reaching out to take the wood from her arms. Their fingers brushed, and Rose felt a warmth that had nothing to do with exertion. For a moment, she forgot to breathe. "I didn't mean to offend, Miss Alderson," Rhett continued, easily balancing the load she'd been struggling with. "But where I come from, neighbors help neighbors, especially when winter's coming on fast." Rose hesitated, torn between pride and practicality. "It's Mrs. Alderson, actually," she corrected him, "though I've been a widow for over a year now." Understanding flashed in Rhett's eyes. "My condolences." "Is that what brought you out west? A fresh start?" Rose nodded, suddenly finding it difficult to maintain her aloof demeanor under his kind gaze. "My husband died in a factory accident. When my aunt left me this property, it seemed like Providence." They walked in silence toward her cabin, a simple one-room structure with a stone chimney that sent wisps of smoke curling into the crisp air. "You've kept a fire going. That's good," Rhett observed. "But this wood won't last you a week once real cold sets in. Your supply looks mighty low." Rose's shoulders sagged slightly. "I've been trying to build up a reserve, but it's hard work for one person," Rhett finished for her. He stacked the wood neatly by her door, then turned to face her. "I've got a wagon full of timber coming in from my place tomorrow. I could bring you a cord or two." "I couldn't possibly accept charity," Rose protested. Rhett's laugh was warm and genuine. "Not charity, Mrs. Alderson, just being neighborly. Besides, I'm heading into town anyway to pick up supplies. It wouldn't be any trouble." Rose studied him, trying to discern his motives. In her experience, men rarely offered help without expecting something in return, but there was something disarmingly honest in Rhett Taylor's face that made her want to trust him. "Perhaps we could arrange a trade," she suggested. "I'm a fair hand with a needle. I could mend that tear in your sleeve." Rhett glanced down at his arm as if noticing the rip for the first time. "Caught it on a fence last week," he admitted with a rueful smile. "If you're offering to fix it, I won't turn you down. Seems my sewing skills begin and end with stitching up horses." The small joke loosened something in Rose's chest. "Then we have an agreement, Mr. Taylor." "Rhett," he corrected her. "Everyone just calls me Rhett." "Very well, Rhett." His name felt strangely intimate on her lips. "I suppose you may call me Rose." As promised, Rhett arrived the next day with a wagon piled high with split logs. Rose watched from her doorway as he unloaded them, the muscles in his arms and back working smoothly beneath his shirt. She hadn't realized she was staring until he glanced up and caught her eye. "Something wrong?" he asked. Rose felt heat rise to her cheeks. No, that's far more wood than I expected. Wyoming winters don't fool around, he replied, stacking another armful. You'll need every stick of this before spring, trust me. After he finished, Rose invited him inside for coffee. The cabin was small but tidy, with a patchwork quilt on the narrow bed and wildflowers arranged in a chipped vase on the table. It's not much, she said, suddenly self-conscious of her humble surroundings. It's a good start, Rhett countered, removing his hat as he ducked through the doorway. Most folks begin with less out here. As Rose prepared the coffee, she asked, Have you lived in Wyoming long? Born and raised about 15 miles north of here, Rhett answered, settling into a chair that creaked beneath his weight. My pa staked his claim after the war, built up a decent cattle operation before he passed on 5 years back. And you took over, me and my younger brother, Roy. Though he spends more time in town than working the herd these days. There was a hint of disapproval in his tone. Rose set a steaming cup before him. It must be lonely sometimes. Rhett's eyes met hers, and for a moment she glimpsed a vulnerability beneath his capable exterior. Sometimes, he admitted, but I've got good neighbors, good land. A man can't ask for much more. And no wife. The question slipped out before Rose could stop it, and she immediately regretted her boldness. But Rhett didn't seem offended. Never found the right woman, he said simply. Or maybe I was too busy with the ranch to look properly. He sipped his coffee, then added, What about you? No family back east wondering why you choose this hardscrabble life? Rose shook her head. My parents died when I was young. I married James when I was 18. He was kind, but... She trailed off, unsure how to explain. But not the great love poets write about, Rhett suggested gently. Rose smiled sadly. No, we were companions more than anything else. When he died, I felt adrift. Coming here was a chance to define myself on my own terms. That takes courage, Rhett said, his admiration evident. Most women wouldn't tackle frontier life alone. Most women haven't experienced how quickly security can vanish, Rose replied. I'd rather face wilderness than dependency. After coffee, Rose mended Rhett's sleeve while he examined her cabin's roof, pointing out places that needed reinforcement before winter snow accumulated. They fell into an easy rhythm of conversation, discovering shared interests in books and music that surprised them both. Not many ranchers quote Shakespeare, Rose observed as she tied off her thread. Rhett grinned. My mother was a schoolteacher before marrying Pa. She made sure her boys had education alongside ranch work, said a man with only muscles and no mind was only half alive. She sounds like a remarkable woman. She was. His voice softened with memory. You remind me of her sometimes, that same determination. The comparison pleased Rose more than she cared to admit. When Rhett finally departed, promising to return in a few days to help with the roof repairs, she found herself watching his retreating figure until it disappeared over the horizon. The days that followed established a pattern. Rhett would arrive with some pretext, checking her wood pile, bringing fresh game, or offering to repair something around the property. Rose would reciprocate with a meal or by washing his shirts. They never acknowledged the obvious, that they were creating reasons to see each other. As autumn deepened, Rose began to anticipate Rhett's visits with increasing eagerness. He brought news from town, stories about his cattle, and occasionally small gifts: a ribbon for her hair, wildflower honey from a neighbor's hives, or a book he thought she might enjoy. One crisp morning in late October, Rhett arrived to find Rose struggling to dig a new outhouse pit. Without a word, he took the shovel from her hands and set to work. The efficiency with which he completed the task in less than an hour made Rose realize how much harder her life would be without his assistance. I'm becoming too dependent on you, she confessed as they shared lunch afterward. That wasn't my intention in coming west. Rhett considered her words carefully. There's a difference between dependency and community, Rose. No one survives out here alone, not even the most stubborn among us. Is that what I am? Stubborn? She asked with a hint of amusement. Determined, he corrected. And there's nothing wrong with that, but accepting help doesn't diminish your independence. That evening, as they sat before the fire, Rhett told her about the upcoming harvest dance in Sweetwater Springs. The whole county turns out, he explained. It's a chance for folks who live miles apart to socialize before winter keeps everyone close to home. It sounds lovely, Rose replied, though I don't know anyone but you. You could know the whole town in one night, Rhett said. After a moment's hesitation, he added, I'd be honored to escort you if you'd like. Rose felt her pulse quicken. As friends, Rhett's gaze was steady, if that's what you want, but I think we both know there's more between us than just neighborly concern. The acknowledgement hung in the air between them, both frightening and exhilarating. Rose had promised herself she wouldn't rush into another relationship, yet her feelings for Rhett had developed with a natural inevitability that defied her caution. I would like to attend with you, she finally said. Rhett's smile made her heart flutter. I'll come for you at sundown on Saturday. The harvest dance was held in the town's newly constructed meeting house, which had been transformed with autumn decorations, dried corn husks, pumpkins, and paper lanterns strung from the rafters. A small band played lively tunes while couples twirled across the wooden floor. Rose wore her best dress, a deep blue calico she'd carefully altered to reflect current fashion as best she could. When Rhett arrived to collect her, his appreciation was evident in his eyes. You look beautiful, he said simply. Rhett had made an effort as well, wearing a clean white shirt and dark vest. His hair was neatly combed and he'd trimmed his beard. He looked less like a rugged rancher and more like the gentleman he was at heart. The dance was everything Rose could have hoped for. Rhett introduced her to neighbors and friends, and she was welcomed warmly into the community. When he led her onto the dance floor, his hand at her waist felt both protective and possessive. You dance well for a cowboy, she teased as they moved together. My mother insisted, he replied with a laugh. Said no son of hers would stomp around like a bear with a sore paw. As the evening progressed, Rose became aware of curious glances from the townspeople. They're staring at us, she whispered to Rhett during a break in the music. They're not used to seeing me with a beautiful woman, he replied. Or perhaps they're just surprised to see Rhett Taylor finally showing interest in something besides cattle. Is that what this is? Interest? Rose asked, suddenly needing clarity. Rhett's expression grew serious. Rose, I've spent more time at your cabin in the past month than at my own ranch house. My interest goes well beyond curiosity. Before she could respond, they were interrupted by a stout woman introducing herself as Mrs. Whitaker, the storekeeper's wife. So you're the widow who took over old Martha Alderson's place, she said, appraising Rose. Brave thing living out there alone. She's not entirely alone, Rhett interjected. She has neighbors who look out for her. Mrs. Whitaker's eyes twinkled with knowing. Indeed. Though some neighbors seem more attentive than others. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a young man who bore a striking resemblance to Rhett, though his features were less weathered and his clothes more fashionable. Brother, he exclaimed, clapping Rhett on the shoulder. Didn't expect to see you here. You usually avoid these gatherings like a rattlesnake. Roy, this is Mrs. Rose Alderson, Rhett said, ignoring the jibe. Rose, my younger brother, Roy. Roy Taylor's smile was charming as he took Rose's hand. So you're the reason my brother's been neglecting his duties. Can't say I blame him. Rose detected a hint of tension between the brothers that went beyond ordinary sibling rivalry. Your brother has been very kind in helping me settle in, she said diplomatically. Kindness, is it? Roy winked. Rhett's many things, but I wouldn't have put kind at the top of the list. Stubborn maybe, hard-working certainly. That's enough, Roy, Rhett warned quietly. Roy held up his hands in mock surrender, just making conversation. He turned to Rose. May I have the next dance? It seems only fair I get to know the woman who's captured my brother's attention. Before Rose could answer, a commotion at the entrance drew everyone's attention. A group of cowboys from a neighboring ranch had arrived, already rowdy from drinking at the saloon. Trouble? Rhett muttered, his posture stiffening. The newcomers surveyed the room with challenging expressions. Their leader, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, spotted Rhett and made his way over. "Well, if it ain't Rhett Taylor," he drawled. "Thought you'd be too busy counting your cows to socialize." "Evening, Harkins," Rhett replied evenly. "Didn't expect to see you here." The man named Harkins grinned unpleasantly. "Can't let you proper folks have all the fun." His gaze shifted to Rose, lingering inappropriately. "Who's this pretty thing?" "Mrs. Alderson is with me," Rhett said, stepping slightly in front of Rose. "And she's not looking for new acquaintances tonight." Harkins's expression darkened. "Still think you're better than everyone else, don't you, Taylor? Just because your pa got here first and claimed the best water rights." Rose sensed the undercurrent of an old grievance. She placed a restraining hand on Rhett's arm, feeling the tension in his muscles. "Mr. Taylor was just about to get me some punch," she said smoothly. "Perhaps you gentlemen could continue your conversation another time." Harkins seemed taken aback by her calm intervention. After a moment, he tipped his hat with exaggerated courtesy. "Another time, then. Enjoy your evening, madam." As he moved away, Rhett exhaled slowly. "I apologize for that. Jack Harkins has had a grudge against my family since water rights were established for the county." "Is he dangerous?" Rose asked quietly. "Not usually," Rhett answered. "But he's been drinking and he likes to stir up trouble." Roy, who had remained uncharacteristically silent during the confrontation, now said, "Maybe we should head home early. No sense risking a brawl." Rhett nodded reluctantly. "Might be wise. Rose, I'm sorry to cut the evening short." "Please don't apologize," she assured him. "I've already had a wonderful time." They made their farewells and left the meeting house. Outside, the night air was cool and clear, stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet sky. Roy excused himself to retrieve their horses, leaving Rhett and Rose alone for a moment. "I wanted this evening to be perfect for you," Rhett said, disappointment evident in his voice. Rose reached for his hand, feeling bold in the darkness. "It was perfect. I got to dance with you, meet your friends, and see a different side of you. That's more than enough for me." Rhett's fingers tightened around hers. "Rose, there's something I need to tell you. I've been meaning to for weeks." Her heart skipped. "What is it?" "I'm falling in love with you," he said simply. "I think I started falling the moment I saw you struggling with that firewood, too proud to admit you needed help." Rose's breath caught. "Rhett, you don't need to say anything now," he interrupted gently. "I know it's soon, and you came west to be independent. The last thing I want is to make you feel pressured." "That's not it," Rose whispered. "I'm falling for you too. It terrifies me how quickly, how completely." Rhett's free hand came up to cup her cheek. "Why does it terrify you?" "Because I've built walls around my heart since James died. I convinced myself I didn't need anyone. And then you appeared, offering to carry my burdens, and those walls started crumbling." Rhett stepped closer. "Rose, I don't want to take away your independence. I admire your strength, your determination, but life out here, it's better when shared." In the silvery moonlight, Rose saw everything she needed in his eyes: respect, desire, and a tenderness that made her tremble. When he lowered his head to kiss her, she met him halfway. The kiss was gentle at first, a question rather than a demand. But as Rose responded, it deepened into something that stirred long dormant feelings within her. This wasn't the dutiful affection she'd known with James. This was a wildfire, fierce and consuming. When they finally parted, both breathless, Rhett pressed his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that since the day we met," Rose smiled. "Even when I was being stubborn about the firewood, especially then," he chuckled. "You looked like an angry kitten trying to carry a load meant for a workhorse." Their moment was interrupted by Roy's return with the horses. If he noticed their flushed faces, he tactfully said nothing. The ride back to Rose's cabin was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts about what had transpired between them. When they arrived, Rhett walked her to the door while Roy waited with the horses. "May I call on you properly tomorrow?" Rhett asked, suddenly formal. "There's a place up in the foothills I'd like to show you." "I'd like that," Rose replied. He kissed her once more, briefly but with unmistakable promise, before rejoining his brother. As they rode away, Rose touched her fingers to her lips, still feeling the warmth of his kiss. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Rose dressed with special care, choosing a practical riding skirt and jacket but adding a pretty lace collar that framed her face. She was braiding her hair when she heard hoofbeats approaching, expecting Rhett. She was surprised to see Jack Harkins dismounting before her cabin. His appearance was more disheveled than the previous night, suggesting he hadn't stopped drinking. "Mrs. Alderson," he called, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. "Thought I'd pay a neighborly visit." Rose remained in the doorway, one hand on the frame. "Mr. Harkins, I appreciate the gesture, but I'm expecting company shortly." "Taylor, I presume?" Harkins spat on the ground. "You should know what kind of man you're dealing with, madam. His family stole water rights that should have been shared, drove my pa to ruin." "I'm sorry for your troubles," Rose said firmly, "but that has nothing to do with me." Harkins took an unsteady step forward. "It does if you're throwing in with him. Pretty woman like you could do better than a Taylor." The sound of approaching riders came as a relief. Rhett appeared with Roy beside him, both men tensing visibly at the sight of Harkins. "Everything all right, Rose?" Rhett called, his eyes never leaving Harkins. "Mr. Harkins was just leaving," she replied, grateful for their arrival. Harkins turned to face them, his hand hovering near his holstered pistol. "Ain't it convenient how Taylor always gets what he wants? Best land, best water, prettiest woman." "You're drunk, Jack," Rhett said evenly, dismounting but keeping his distance. "Go home and sleep it off. Or what? You'll run me off like you did my family's cattle when the creek dried up." Roy interjected, "That was 10 years ago, and your father's cattle were on our land." The judge settled it fair and square. "Nothing fair about it," Harkins growled. His hand inched closer to his gun. Rose's heart pounded as she realized the situation was deteriorating rapidly. "Please," she called, stepping forward despite her fear. "There's no need for this. Whatever happened in the past, it can be discussed rationally another time." Something in her voice seemed to reach Harkins. He glanced at her, then back at the Taylor brothers. After a tense moment, his hand dropped away from his weapon. "This ain't over, Taylor," he muttered, climbing unsteadily back onto his horse. They watched in silence as he rode away, the threat of his return hanging in the air like storm clouds. "I'm sorry about that," Rhett said once Harkins was out of sight. "The man holds grudges like others collect stamps." "Is he truly dangerous?" Rose asked. Roy answered before his brother could. "Mostly when he's drinking. Sober, he's all talk." "I should check on you more regularly," Rhett said, concern etching his features. "At least until Harkins calms down." "I'm not afraid," Rose assured him, though it wasn't entirely true. "But I won't object to seeing more of you." The tension of the morning gradually dissipated as they rode into the foothills. Rhett led Rose to a secluded valley where a natural spring created a small, pristine pond surrounded by aspens. In the clear autumn light, the yellow leaves glowed like gold coins against the azure sky. "It's beautiful," Rose breathed, dismounting to better appreciate the view. "I come here when I need peace," Rhett said, spreading a blanket on a grassy spot overlooking the water. "Not even Roy knows about this place." They shared the picnic lunch. Rose had prepared fried chicken, biscuits, and apple pie. As they ate, Rhett told stories of growing up on the frontier, of learning to track and hunt from a Shoshone man who worked for his father, of the first cattle drive he'd led at 16. In turn, Rose shared memories of Boston, the libraries and theaters, the bustling harbor, the changing seasons in the common. She spoke of her dreams as a girl, many abandoned when she married James at her aunt's urging after her parents' deaths. "I always wanted to teach," she confessed. But James needed a homemaker, not a bluestocking with ideas above her station. "Sweetwater Springs has been looking for a teacher," Rhett said thoughtfully. "The last one left to get married last spring." Rose's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Completely. The town council would be thrilled to have someone with your education take the position. but my cabin is too far from town for daily travel, especially in winter. There's a small house behind the schoolhouse, Rhett explained. Part of the compensation package. You could stay there during the week, return to your place on weekends, or, he hesitated, you could consider other arrangements. Rose caught his meaning and blushed. Rhett Taylor, are you proposing something improper? He laughed. No, madam. When I propose, there will be nothing improper about it. I was thinking more along the lines of renting your place to a reliable tenant while you take the teaching position. When you propose, Rose echoed, her heart racing. Rhett's expression grew serious. I know it's fast, Rose. But I've never been more certain of anything in my life than I am of my feelings for you. He took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. I'm not asking today. I want to court you properly, give you time to be sure. But I wanted you to know my intentions are honorable and my heart is yours whenever you're ready to accept it. Rose felt tears prick her eyes. No one has ever respected my dreams the way you do. Because they're part of who you are, Rhett said simply. And I love who you are, stubborn independence and all. In that moment, surrounded by autumn's glory, Rose knew she had found not just a partner but a champion. Rhett Taylor didn't want to change her or constrain her, he wanted to help her flourish. They returned to her cabin as the sun was setting, the sky painted in spectacular shades of orange and pink. At her door, Rhett kissed her thoroughly, leaving them both breathless. I'll speak to the town council about the teaching position, he promised. And I'll consider it seriously, she replied. Thank you for believing in me. Over the following weeks, Rhett courted Rose with a combination of practical assistance and romantic gestures. He brought a milk cow for her to use, taught her to shoot a rifle for protection, and helped her prepare her cabin for the approaching winter. But he also brought wildflowers, read poetry to her by firelight, and once arranged for the town's only piano player to visit so they could dance in her small cabin, recreating their first dance without the interruptions. November brought the first heavy snowfall, transforming the landscape into a glittering wonderland. Rhett arrived with a sleigh instead of his horse, bringing supplies and news that the town council had unanimously approved Rose as the new teacher to start after the Christmas holiday. They're offering a fair salary, he told her as they sat before her fire. And the living quarters, though small, are comfortable. Rose had been considering the opportunity carefully. I'm inclined to accept, she said, but I have concerns about leaving this place unattended. I've thought about that, Rhett replied. My foreman, Thomas, and his wife need a place of their own. They could live here, care for the property, and pay you a modest rent. You've thought of everything, Rose said, smiling. Not quite everything. Rhett reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet pouch. There's still one matter unresolved between us. Rose's breath caught as he knelt before her chair. I know we haven't known each other long by some standards, he began, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. But out here, life doesn't wait for conventions. I love you, Rose Alderson, your strength, your kindness, your determination. I want to build a life with you, not to diminish your independence, but to walk beside you through whatever comes. He opened the pouch, revealing a ring with a small but perfect sapphire. This was my mother's. She made me promise I'd only give it to a woman who was her equal in spirit. You are that woman, Rose. Tears blurred her vision as he continued, Will you marry me? Not because you need protection or assistance, but because two hearts are stronger together than apart. Rose couldn't speak for a moment, overwhelmed by emotion. Finally, she whispered, Yes, yes, I will marry you, Rhett Taylor. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, she added, But I still intend to teach. Rhett laughed, joy illuminating his face. I wouldn't have it any other way. You'll be the best teacher Sweetwater Springs has ever seen. He pulled her into his arms, sealing their engagement with a kiss that promised a lifetime of partnership and passion. They were married 2 weeks later in the town's small church, with Roy as best man and Mrs. Whittaker standing up for Rose. The entire community turned out to celebrate, even Jack Harkins, who had sobered up enough to offer a grudging congratulation. After a brief honeymoon at Rhett's ranch house, they settled into a rhythm that honored both their individual needs and their shared life. Rose began teaching in January, staying at the school quarters during the week and returning to the ranch on weekends and holidays. Her students adored her innovative teaching methods, and the parents appreciated her dedication. Rhett expanded his cattle operation with Rose's sound financial advice, eventually building a new home halfway between the ranch and town to make Rose's commute easier. Thomas and his wife thrived at Rose's cabin, turning it into a productive small farm that supplemented their income from working for Rhett. By their first anniversary, Rose had news that would change their lives once more. As they sat before the fire in their new home, she took Rhett's hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "Your hands were made for mine," she said, echoing his words from their first meeting, "and now they're needed for someone else too." Rhett's eyes widened with understanding, then filled with tears of joy. "A baby," Rose nodded, her own eyes misting. "Due in summer. I'll finish the school year, but then I thought I might take a year at home. The school board has already approved a temporary replacement." Rhett gathered her into his arms, overwhelmed with happiness. "I never imagined I could be this fortunate," he whispered against her hair. "When I stopped to help a stubborn woman with her firewood, I had no idea I was meeting my future." "Sometimes the heaviest burdens lead us to our greatest blessings," Rose replied, nestling against his chest. "I came west seeking independence but found something better, a partnership of equals." As snow fell softly outside their window, they remained by the fire, planning their future and marveling at how a chance encounter with firewood had kindled a love strong enough to warm them through all seasons of life.